Bronya will remain the strongest harmony character for a very wrong character. Bronya will remain the strongest harmony character for a very long time. The sheer strength of this character is matched by no other. It's not the fact that she's the current favorite child of Honkai Star Rail, or maybe it is. But in actuality, she has a skill set that allows her to thrive in many different team comps and situations, hence her being a very versatile character. To understand why I claim her to be the best harmony options indefinitely, we have to take a number of things into consideration. We also have to take into consideration that Toshi does have Bronya bias, so with this being his favorite character, of course he's going to say that she's the best character. But let me explain why she's the best character, okay? You probably know the path of the harmony for a number of reasons, but the first and foremost reason is going to be buffers. These are the characters that allows your DPS to excel past their limits. They buff the DPS in every way: speed, attack, crit damage, and now even crit rate. But they essentially make the gameplay for your DPS characters a lot more easier, a lot more better, sometimes just straight up enhancing those characters. Now, with the addition of Yukong, the roster does feel a lot more complete. Having another option allows there to be more variety. Although you could argue Yukong does have the same role as Bronya, but the fact of the reality is both characters kind of function a little differently. I would say Bronya is a lot more late game oriented, and Yukong is a lot more mid to late game-ish oriented. But only time will tell how exactly that works out, because Bronya is definitely a character that is way too good, way too overloaded for what it's worth. And Yukong is definitely really good too, but I think we'll cover this character in a different video. Now, what makes this all interesting is that every character here provides speed for the ally. With Eidolon 2, Bronya gives speed to the ally for one turn. That's really valuable considering a speed increase for the ally is going to make that character much faster. But at the same time, for a character like Seal that wants to do more damage, you're going to get more value out of Seal's best in slot late code. For situations like that, a speed buff is very, very good. Asta just straight up giving speed to the whole team for 2 turns makes her a really good buffer 4th slot character. After Eidolon 1, Ting Yun giving speed to the ally is very good, although it is 20% and versus Bronya's 30%, and this being an ultimate versus an elemental skill, it's not as good as you might think, but all the speed you can get definitely helps when you take, a character like Seal and her best in slot Lycone into consideration. Yukong at the start of battle giving 10% of speed to all allies for 2 turns. That's actually pretty good. It's easy to see that they're tuning down the speed increases overall. You can see Bronya gives 30% speed increase with her elemental skill on her Eidolon 2, Asta giving speed increase to the whole team with her ultimate, but that is her ultimate skill. Ting Yun giving a 20% speed increase whenever she uses her ultimate on the ally, and then Yukong giving a 10% speed increase for all allies for 2 turns at the start of battle. And then once that speed increase goes away, you can no longer get it from the character. So it's safe to say that they're definitely looking at how they design the characters going forward for the path of harmony. In a past video, we talked about Bronya and how essentially she is a hybrid character. Hybrid characters meaning characters that double dip into other paths. Bronya being able to give allies attack increase with her elemental skill to a single ally, of course, allows her to be a very strong harmony buffer, but at the same time she cleanses a debuff from said ally, so that makes her a harmony abundance mix, because abundance usually are known for healing and cleansing capabilities, and when you have a buffer that cleanses as well, she's a much more versatile and hybrid-like character. In a lot of situations, you'll find this skill to be very valuable. It was so valuable that it had to be nerfed at the launch of the game. Being able to give an ally a damage increase is going to make that character do much more damage all the time. And we understand that whenever there is a damage increase of any sort, this counts as elemental damage. Elemental damage meaning no matter what element you are is going to be a straight up damage increase for every single element in the game. Also, being able to dispel a debuff from that ally is going to make her really valuable. She reminds me a lot of Emilia from Epic 7, and I think that's part of the reason why I enjoy this character a lot. She has a very unique playstyle that is very different from all the other Harmony characters, and I think most characters going forward. But she works really well with characters like Seal, characters that want to take the turn and do as much damage as they can in that one turn. So any hyper carry like character that is centered around doing as much damage as they can with their ultimate and their elemental skill within one turn is essentially going to be really good with Bronya. And with her being able to dispel a debuff, that allows her to be put into team compositions that you didn't think you would otherwise be able to do. It allows her to be a much more versatile character, so you don't necessarily need to have another cleanser in your team comp. Because if your only DPS character is going to be your seal, well, you probably just want to cleanse that character because she's only going to be the one doing the damage in your team comps. So I think that's very important to take into consideration going forward when it comes to designing teams around Bronya and the characters she's buffing. Being able to increase the attack of all allies and increase their crit damage by a percentage of Bronya's crit damage is very good. That makes it to where this is infinite scaling. Of course, there will be a threshold you probably hit eventually where you feel like you hit a ceiling, but with the game adding more damage amplifications into the future, you will always be able to give more damage from the ultimate, because a character like Yukong gives crit damage to the allies. So when you have a character like Bronya and you have a character that gives more crit damage to all allies, depending on the percentage of her crit damage, well, any additive crit damage you get from outside sources is going to make her ultimate be a much more stronger buffing effect. One of my favorite things about the character is that they actually give her some effect resistance stat increases with her stat tree. I think this is really valuable because with any cleanser, you probably want to build them with effect resistance. I think Bronya is a very interesting character. I think for most part, she is the hardest character in the game to build. Given the nature of her being able to crit with her basic attacks is very good. I think it's really good to the point where you just don't need to give her any crit rate at all. You can just give her tons of crit damage and attack if you really wanted. But I think a character that has crit rate increase on her basic attack with 100% chance, with that being her only attacking skill, while also getting crit damage ascensions, when damage boost ascensions, every single ascension stat she gets is going to be very valuable. But it tells you a lot of how the character should be built, or the character will be built in my eyes. Bronya being able to abuse the 4-piece wind artifact set makes her all the more valuable. It is a 25% action forward whenever the character uses her ultimate. I think it's very important to take into consideration. For a character that wants to use her ultimate as much as she can, and wants to constantly funnel her action forward, getting a lot of action forward is going to make the character a lot more valuable, because that in turn makes it to where she's constantly taking turns. When you have a character that is constantly taking turns and constantly giving allies turns, you have a very, very strong character. Being able to wield a very strong 5-star light cone and thus giving more damage amp to the ally she buffs up is going to make her all the more valuable, because this is on top of the damage increase she already gives. So you have a 30%, depending on the level of your 5-star light code, damage increase for the ally, which counts as elemental damage increases, while on top of the damage increase she already gives with her elemental skill, which is another elemental damage increase. So you have for what makes up to be a very strong elemental damage increase for your allies because of how it's calculated. So with all that in mind, why do I say she's the best Harmony character in the game? I think with the nature of her being 5-star, having access to one of the best artifact sets in the game, being able to cleanse a debuff from an ally is going to make her an extremely strong character going forward, in the sense of making her very versatile because she functions like a hybrid character. Being able to give crit damage that has infinite scalings, pretty much the more crit damage you have on this character and the outside sources of crit damage you get allows her to give even more crit damage to the allies, giving damage increases and attack increases. So she's buffing damage amps in every single way possible, and giving an turn to the ally makes her all the more valuable, because the turn to the ally allows the ally to completely ignore the turn order sequence in the game. So she fundamentally changes the way the game is played. And I think, of course, being Bronie, how could I forget that? That is the first and foremost reason why she is the best Harmony path character in the game. And I think there is a character that is probably on the way that will definitely do everything Bronya does but better, and gives more to the allies in terms of, value. But when that character comes out, I probably will be using that character alongside Bronya, because what's better than one Bronya? Well, 2 Bronyas, of course. Now let's talk about the ways of obtaining Bronya. The first way of obtaining Bronya is from the beginner banner. The newbie banner I like to call it, the banner you get when you first hop into Honkai Star Rail for the first time. When you load up the page of the gacha, you have a couple banners, but the first banner you'll get is the beginner banner. On the banner, whenever you reach 40 summons into the banner, 40 of your own pulls into the banner, you are presented with a 5-star from one of the 7 options. So you effectively have a 1 in 7 chance of obtaining Bronya from the beginner banner. You can also obtain Bronya from the limited banner at any point whenever you roll in said banner. Now, of course, I don't like when anyone loses their 50/50s, but if you were to get Bronya, and let's say a lot of people probably did on Silverwolf's banner, then you are presented with the older version of Bronie. And then we have the standard banner, and this is featured with, of course, Bronya in the front, as she should be. But you have a 1 in 14 chance of obtaining her on the standard banner. And as I've previously went over in the gacha guide video, you probably all know that there isn't any pity for standard weapons or standard characters. So every time you hit the pity in the game, you have a 50% chance of it being a weapon or a character. And then you have a 1 in 7 chance, depending on whether or not it was a weapon or character, to get the weapon or selected character of your wants, pretty much. And last but not least, this is probably going to be the way most players obtain Bronya, but you have a chance to get her from the selector summon. I don't advise going all in on the standard banner just to get Bronya from the selector summon, but if you want to do that because you have a clear devotion to Bronya more than I do, then knock yourself out. But just know you're missing out on limited characters to come into the future. Characters like Blade that are really fucking cool. And lastly, the best thing about Bronya is that all of her Eidolons are extremely good. You're able to give a skill point to an ally, which has a fixed 50% chance. This will proc more than you think, or it might just not proc at all, depending on whether or not your RNG is good. And if you're like me and you have bad RNG, you probably won't be getting the skill point often. And that's part of the reason why I don't use a character like QQ in my teams. Her Eidolon 4 allows Bronya to do damage to the enemy. Damage whenever it's not her turn. So one thing to keep in mind is that Silverwolf synergizes with this very well. You can put the wind weakness from your team composition with Silverwolf onto the enemy, which allows your Bronya to do the follow-up attacks. That's very, very, very valuable because, well, if you take into consideration, you can pretty much bring her wherever you bring Silverwolf and get more value if you use the 50/50 team composition split, or team element split, I should say, with Silverwolf. Lastly, the Eidolon 6 for Bronya allows her to give the ally another turn with the damage increases from her elemental skill. That in turn makes her a lot more viable with a character like Jing Yuan, who wants to use the damage increases she gets from her elemental skill to the ally, but can only really take advantage of it for one turn. And with how the Lightning Lord works, you get a lot of value having damage increases that last longer than one turn, because the Lightning Lord counts as another person too. So there you have it. Now you see why Bronya is my favorite 5-star character in the game, and why I deem her to be the best harmony option, and the best harmony option to exist for a very long time. This character does so much with so little effort. So much that essentially, if I were to repeat what I said throughout the video, it'd be a tongue twister. She does so much because she has an overloaded kit. Also being able to take advantage of the fact that she's a standard banner character, so you probably will be getting her at some point, and you probably will be getting Eidolons of said character at some point. Or maybe you probably won't get her ever. That might be some unlucky people. But once you do have the character, you are presented with a very strong and very rewarding character. Very fun to play, very fun to use, and very fun to make work, fun to build, and fun to look at. I've already seen people say they've gotten Eidolon 2 and Eidolon 3 of the character completely free to play. It's all RNG, of course. And if you played Genshin Impact, you probably already know that there is a lot of people out there that have Eidolon 6 for Kashin. So to say that free-to-play players wouldn't achieve that is a little bit pessimistic. You'll probably get it at some point. Well, maybe not you, listening to me say this, but you, in terms of someone out there that plays Honkai Star Rail. And as I said before, if Bronya was to be power crept, then this game will turn to shit. Twitch.tv/Toshio, the link will be in the description. Thank you for watching, and have a nice rest of your day. Peace.